From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
And good Sunday morning to you. It is another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, January 12th. We have a lot to cover in this video with the long-range changes that are going to be taking place and transitioning later this week. We do expect temperatures to turn colder after we are exceptionally warm this weekend and will remain slightly above average, or at least or above average this week here, coming up here up to about Thursday. We had this in our long-range chart here on Friday that we put out. Well above average temperatures this weekend. That's a no-brainer. Obviously, we've seen some plenty of 60s and some record highs across the region. I'll cover that here in a second. And then we also have a transition period here, the 17th and 18th, which is Friday and Saturday of next week, that may coincide with what we think is going to be an overrunning storm. And I know a lot of you are interested in that, so we'll get to cover that in the video as well. And then we have turned to at least slightly below average through the end of the month, from the 19th to the end of the month, and likely you're going to continue that at times here into February as well. I do think we're going to have a longer-term change here, where the predominant pattern is going to be colder than average. And as long as I've always said this, as long as you have the colder than average temperatures in place, or at least near average this time of year, because we are climatologically the coldest period of the year that we are in right now, so you don't necessarily need below average temperatures in order to get it to snow, but you're giving yourself a fighting chance as long as temperatures are not above average. Okay, so if you're a snow lover, I think you're going to like this period coming up here. All right, we have some storm signals we're going to talk about here. We also have, up until this change occurs, we had this cold front move through this morning, so they had some thunderstorms with that overnight, some high winds. That's now moved off the coast. We now have a shower event here on Tuesday and again on Wednesday night. This will all be in the form of liquid precipitation, but then we have the winter storm signals coming into play here. The 18th is the first one. There's actually 3 in succession. The 18th is the first one. It's kind of like in a marginal, because you're transitioning yet, and we'll talk about that in the video here, but in more detail, since that's the end of this week coming up. And it looks like we're going to have some snow maps out for that, some accumulating snow, maybe some ice. But then there's the signals after that are probably going to be predominantly snow if they occur. It's not a definite yet, but because there's still signals. But there's a signal right around the 21st, 22nd, and again around the 25th, 26th, which was not included in this outlook. But there are 3 in succession: 18th, or 17th and 18th, which is Friday night and Saturday, and that's the more immediate threat. And then we have another one in the 21st, 22nd time frame, another one around the 25th, 26th time frame. Okay, so there's some storms lining up. But the latter 2 have a better chance of getting into a little bit more in the way of snow if they, in fact, hit the region. We are going to be above average for the month, and that's pretty... it's very. I could have put this very high confidence here, because it's. I mean, even with the colder period expected at the end of the month here, it's not going to be enough to skew the average from what we've had over the past, basically month to date, and then this weekend especially. When you're getting temperatures that are 30 to 35 degrees above average, you're not going to be able to offset that with even 10 days of slightly below average temperatures. It just won't be enough. So we're still going to finish above average for the month with slightly above average precipitation. We did change the snowfall projections from below average to near average, and I think this should be very easy to attain with the things that are in the pipeline that we're seeing. And some areas already had some thread the needle snow last week already. So, I don't think it might actually be changing to slightly above or above average by, in future outlooks. We'll see. I don't want to make that big jump from below to above, because that's quite a shift. But we did change to the near average this week, and we kept February above average for snowfall with slightly below average temperatures for the month. Here's what normal is across our region. These are some select major climate stations across the region. If you're in between one of these locations here, just go to the closest area to you, just to get a general idea of what average is expected to be in both January and February. So we updated this chart from last week. Last week it was showing December, January. This one is now showing January, February. So you can see what average is. Now, some of these areas already have some accumulating snow this month. I believe Allentown's around 3 inches, 3.1, something like that. Harrisburg's 3.9 from that storm last week. Scranton's is like between 5 and 6, I think. But some of these areas have some snow this month. It won't be difficult to get to at least average this month. And this is we're expecting above average here in February. We've maintained that in this outlook, so this would not be difficult to do either. considering what is average. Now, we do have to make up for December, which was below in many locations, except for like around the Scranton Wilkes-Barre area. Some of you have to make up for some lost time, but I do think we have the opportunity to do that as well going forward. Here's the unusually warm temperatures that we had this weekend, some 30 to 35 degrees above average, which was insane, and high temperature records set or tied across the region. This is a long list. This was just Saturday. I know some of these locations have already set record highs early Sunday morning as well. So the little red dots here are the locations that we cover. This is the entire eastern region, and this is put together by the National Weather Service Eastern Region Headquarters, so they cover a lot of area here. The ones that are red dots are records that were set or tied in our region, and that's in the red dots here. So there's a lot of records that fell this weekend, but I think going forward, we're still going to have above average temperatures this week, just not quite as ridiculously above average. We're not talking about, mid to upper 60s here for highs. So here's that, examining the transition here. This is that 17th, 18th time frame. We get that transition. We're going to have a gradient that's going to set up over a region where you have this ridging here that's in place, but there is in the northeastern side here, there's a very strong high pressure that's going to be in place, funneling in cold air at the onset of this system coming in. So it's going to be an overrunning event. Overrunning meaning you have warmer air overriding colder air aloft and colder air at the surface. So I think it starts off as snow just about everywhere, and then you're going to transition over to ice and in some areas some rain. It's going to depend on blocking and how much blocking is available for this, and we'll talk about that storm here later in the outlook. But here is looking at the temperature period between the 17th and 18th, showing that transition, and right after that, this is the next 2 days, the 19th, 20th. You can see slightly below average temperatures have taken over much of the country, and this is going to continue for a while. This is going all the way out to the end of the run here, and this is the 27th, 28th time frame. So it just gets colder and colder. So I do expect that period between like the 26th and 31st to be slightly below to below average instead of just near to slightly below. So we are going to transition to that colder regime going forward, and that's going to be at a minimum through the end of the month. And one of the changes that was with the polar vortex, we talked about this in the previous videos too. This is what was basically preventing winter from happening for a while. This in combination with the unfavorable Madden-Julian oscillation phases in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. This was the stratospheric polar vortex was stuck over the polar regions, which did not allow for any cold air to come back into the United States. But now we're showing this elongate. This is around the 20th, an elongated cross-polar flow here, elongated polar vortex, allowing two different lobes of this PV. One is going to be over northern Russia, one coming over eastern Canada and the northeastern United States. It doesn't split, but it does elongate enough that you get the polar vortex to get some cold air into the region that was not there prior. So this is one of the things that are going to change. I think more importantly, though, are the changes to the Madden-Julian oscillation. Now, this is last week's graphic. I have side by side the current on the right, last week's projection from the European model, which has not handled this very, very well. It did have the emergence into phase 4 last week and went into phase 5, briefly phase 6, and then collapsed in the circle of death. Well, this is a warm look on the European ensembles last week. Okay, these are all warm phases. I can put W's here. These are warm phases. All three of these phases are warm phases. And it never got into 7 or 8 or 1 or 2. These are colder phases on this side. Okay, this was last week's projection. This is this week's projection. And then you see there's been some distinct changes here where it did go through 4. That's great. And the amplitude was pretty close to accurate. But then now it keeps the amplitude pretty high through 5 and 6 and then takes it into 7. This is a change that the GFS ensembles have first identified, and then it collapses in a circle of death, but it's going to start to loop and do one of these numbers back like this, I believe, in time. Okay, and it's starting to signal that. But it does have it going into phase 7 now. That is very important because phase 7 is a colder look for this time of year in January. Okay, here's the GFS bias corrected, and it goes well into phase 7 here, very strongly into phase 7, and it's getting this keeps nudging further and further closer to phase 8. Doesn't quite get there. It's nudging in that direction. So these last couple runs of the GFS ensembles, European ensembles, were taking this. Originally it was kind of taking it like this, and then it kept moving closer and closer this way, like this. It keeps doing this. Okay, so this might not be done trending in this direction. I do think eventually you get that. you do get the phase 7 here, and that's going to be coinciding with our cold period that we're expecting. You can see phase 7 is a colder period. As a matter of fact, here's a better look at it. Phase 7 in January gives you the colder air bleeding into the eastern United States, eastern Canada, Great Lakes, upper Midwest. So what we're seeing on the ensembles makes sense with the MJO projection. Okay, whether that gets into 8 or not, we'll see. But I think this is going to be one of those deals where, even the GFS ensembles are indicating that. It goes into circle death. Where does it go after that? It might just do a loop back out here and continue it out in this area like this. It might. We'll see. Longer-term projections of the MJO, which are not shown. This only goes to the 26th of January. I have some sources that that are more statistical and experimental, but they go out well into the month of February, the entire month of February, and also into March, and they're suggesting that it's going to be back in these favorable phases in the Western Pacific and into 8 and 1 eventually. Okay, so we're still on track with that. That's why I think that eventually, with better tropical forcing, phase 8, phase 1, phase 2 in January are very good for the sustainment of cold, and that's pretty much going. You go forward here. That's why you're seeing this look here of phase 7, very cold. All right, so it's no surprise that this is showing or yielding this, okay, because that's what we're expecting in phase 7 anyway. Longer term CFS V2 keeps this the entire month of February. This loop goes all the way into the end of February, and you can see it's colder than average. Might not be brutally colder than average, but still colder than average nevertheless. So I think we're going to have that continue for this month, and the Euro monthlies that just came out a couple days ago are showing colder than average temperatures as well for the target month of February 2020. Okay, so we are not brutally cold in our region, but we are still slightly below average. Slightly below average is plenty good enough to get snow events here and actually you don't really want it brutally cold anyway if you're a snow lover, because that helps to suppress some of these storms further south. If it's too cold, it's almost like too cold to snow. You ever hear that phrase? That's what they're talking about. If it's too cold over your region, it forces the storm track further south, and you miss out on the bigger snows or the accumulating snows in our region. Because of that. So slightly below average will do the trick. All right, so this is a good outlook here for the Euro Weeklies for the month of February 2020. Now let's get into this overrunning event next weekend. That's exactly what it is. It's an overrunning snow to perhaps ice and perhaps rain situation. This is going to come down to blocking, and I'll show you this in a second here. But what initially happens here is you have high pressure, very strong high pressure, that's sitting in a perfect spot over southeastern Canada and northern New England, so it's funneling in cold air here at the surface. You do have an area low pressure, very strong area low pressure that's trying to cut and go this way. Okay, the warm front associated with this is back here. Here's your warm front. So it's running into this high pressure. This is trying to advance northeastward with the low pressure. It's running into this high that's bringing the cold air into the surface. So you start off as, get rid of this nonsense here, you start off as snow and accumulating snow across most of our region. As you go through time, though, you get a transition, and this might take several hours. You could get a decent amount of snow before any changeover occurs to ice. The high retreats a little bit, and you get an icing situation after that. Uncertain if that continues, if the high continues to retreat, if the blocking goes away, and you might end briefly as rain in some locations. GFS is suggesting that at the very end. The European model is a little more aggressive with the warmth and less blocking, so it brings this transition a little quicker. Keeps accumulating snow central and northern areas only. Okay, so that's a possibility. And then you have this possibility, which is the Canadian model here, showing the accumulating snow holding on longer because of the stronger blocking in place. So that's what really it comes down to for this weekend. It is going to be an overrunning event, but how much cold air it can be retained at the surface and for how long. Okay, and that's going to come down to blocking. I put these graphics side by side. The GFS ensembles on the left, the Euro ensembles on the right, or in the middle, and the Canadian ensembles on the right. They are all handling blocking differently. Now, they all have the blocking here. This is all showing. This is the North Atlantic Oscillation, which would prevent the storm from going too far north and forcing it to redevelop further south, giving you more snow and or ice. The stronger the block is. Okay, I did this red line here because it's hard to see. I had to shrink these to fit. But the European ensemble is about -1 or thereabout. It's still negative, but I did this red line here so you can see the difference between the two models here. This is right along the line of the European Ensemble. You see the GFS Ensemble is a little bit stronger of a block. It's about negative 1.5. And the Canadian Ensemble is negative 2, which is even stronger yet. So that's why you're seeing the differences in the model projections of the European model, seeing a quicker transition from snow to sleet to freezing rain to rain. GFS Ensemble, a little bit stronger of a block, a little bit, doesn't take much, but it has a longer period of snow on the front end, then ice, then briefly rain before ending, okay, and then the cold air comes in back after that. The Canadian Ensemble shows a mostly snow event because the blocking's stronger. So it's all going to come down to the blocking for this event. How strong is that block? And that's something we're going to be following throughout the week. But we definitely have a situation here where we're going to have overrunning snow at the onset. I do think we're going to get some accumulating snow out of this, and could be some decent amounts out of this. If this block is stronger, you could end up with a very decent plowable snowfall, even if there was a change to ice or rain or whatever. So before that, we're definitely going to watch how this progresses throughout the week, and there's bound to be some changes with this as we go throughout the week, as far as both snow, how much snow and ice are come on the front end. Are we going to change over to ice and or rain, and when? A lot of things to work out with this. Okay, is it going to stay mostly snow? We'll see. We'll see. It's all going to come out of this blocking here. So that's what we're looking at going forward. It is the first of 3 signals that we have. Okay, so if it doesn't work out, it's still coming during a transition period. The 17th, 18th is Friday and Saturday. Okay, this comes in Friday night. That is our transition period. That's not when we're locked in the cold yet, or not projected to be locked into the cold yet. All right, so if it doesn't work out and you're, oh man, here, supposed to have a big storm and here it goes, the model's turning warmer and now I'm not getting anything, or I'm getting very little, and it went over to the ice and then rain. Okay, here we go again. There's other signals behind that. After we get past that transition period of the 17th, 18th, once we get to the 19th and beyond, it is colder than average. So any signals that are after that, any storms that hit after that, are predominantly in the form of snow. So you have the 21st, 22nd time frame we're still going to watch, and again the 25th, 26th time frame is another signal. Wasn't listed on the Friday long range, but I'm telling you that is another signal. So there's some periods, and they're going to go forward beyond that too. I'm just limiting it to just that for now. Okay, so we have opportunities going forward. If you don't get it from, or what you wanted, I guess, from the Friday night, Saturday deal on the 18th, there are other opportunities in the pipeline. So overall, mild and average through Thursday of this week, and then the transition occurs Friday, Saturday to coincide with this storm that we're talking about. Colder temperatures then remain for the foreseeable future, and that goes right into February. And we're focusing on the first of several storm signals this week. We're going to spend the majority of our time and energy into that storm. We'll be dealing with that in the My Pocket Meteorologist Premium Forum exclusively until we get to a point where we have to start issuing maps. That's not going to be coming till the end of the week. So public stuff, you're going to get the daily forecast videos. You're going to get the local forecasts. Those are all our free products and everything, but we are discussing everything in advance in the Premium Forum. So if you are not a member of the Premium Forum and want to get involved in this active period coming forward, maybe you were holding off because you thought, hey, winter's not coming. Well, it's coming now. So these discussions are going to be hot and heavy going forward here. And if you want to become part of this discussion for this system coming up and all the signals beyond that are still in the pipeline, click on this image below the video. It'll take you to the My Pocket Meteorologist winter page where you can sign up for both text alerts and the Premium Forum, and or if you're not somebody that wants to, learn about what's going on behind the scenes, just get the text alerts. It'll give you specific timing and amounts for your area, and you'll get it in advance to the public. So take a look at that. Just click on this image below the video, and that will take you to the My Pocket Meteorologist winter page for EPAWA and Weather New Jersey, which runs that program. I'm EPAWA meteorologist Bobby Marchus. That is this edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, January 12th. Join us again next week, which will be probably at the point where we're already transitioning. We'll be beyond that storm on the weekend already by that point. Maybe we're looking ahead at some other more concrete looks at the next storms in the pipeline beyond that. I would expect that we're going to be in a colder than average pattern by the time we get to the 19th and next weekend's Weather Weeklies video. Take care.